This is one of the most important things about Path of Exile 2 that nobody's talking about right now. I don't know why. What is it, you ask? Maybe it's your mother's phone number? Maybe it's another hair that falls from a professional streamer? Maybe it's just a question. Almost 3 years ago we were shown that in Path of Exile 2 you will be able to have multiple 6 links in almost any build.
There are some really big advantages here. For one, every single skill gem in Path of Exile 2 can be a 6 link. This is going to cause huge changes in how players design character builds.
Opening the possibility for better scaling and customize other skills besides the main one, obviously. But in Path of Exile 2, sockets are just one way of scaling your character's power. There's a million more. And if you want to know more about scaling and all that kind of stuff, you can check out my new book that goes in depth about the subject. It contains everything related to leveling, building, and ultimately scaling the best build this game has to offer. And if you want to know which is the best place to find it, it's probably my house. Coming back to topic, in the most recent teaser video, we saw an example with a character performing 5 different damaging skills in rotation with one another. Definitely a more engaging and dynamic combat. And even me being a completely one-click cyclone monkey, I'm completely on board. So what's the important question? Will we be able to play different skills simultaneously and efficiently in Path of Exile 2? Well, let's see. Using the Agora's teaser, I could identify 5 different skills, which I will be naming random names. For example, Dancing Spear, which is this one similar to Cyclone, with obviously tags could be physical, attack, AoE, melee, and movement. Then there's Force Blow, which tags could be physical, attack, AoE, and melee. Then Static Slam, which could be lighting, attack, AoE, slam, and melee. Then it was Frostwave, which could be cold, attack, AoE, and melee. And then this one, which is Soul Grip, which can be attack, movement, spell, melee, and duration. As a player, I have to decide now if playing multiple skills is the right choice. Is it efficient? Is it fun? Where are the benefits? Before answering these questions, 3 important things must be said. Number 1, most games out there have the cooldown treatment for skills. That means powerful ones have bigger cooldowns and weaker ones can be spammed more often. The right way to play is always to rotate between them, obviously. In the case of Path of Exile, however, most skills don't have cooldowns, so spamming the strongest one is always on the table. Number 2, is there an actual benefit on playing with more than one? Path of Exile doesn't have a combo system like Blade and Soul, for example, so there's nothing to gain there. It also doesn't have a need for source generation like Diablo 4, for example. F that shit. There are monster resistances and they are extremely important, but you don't really pick your damage type based on that, like ever. Instead, you have ways of penetrating, ignoring, or lowering the enemy defenses. So the only reason I find to play more than one skill in Path of Exile is probably situational effectiveness. For example, maybe one for clearing and one for bossing. We saw 3 million times swapping gems within increased AoE and conk effect and that kind of stuff, or having like weapon swap with another 6-link more dedicated to clear maps or just bossing, or having your main skill for clearing in your two-handed weapon and then you have your bossing setup on your armor. That's like basically every single Path of Exile build out there most of the time. And finally, number 3 is that opportunity cost is very important and resources are always limited. So having said that, which skill combination is more efficient? Well, let's play some abstract numbers and imagine that every skill has a base damage of 100, so it's easier to follow. If I decided to invest in Frostwave, for example, because I'm a big advocate for Glacial Cascade and Freezing and those pops that you do with Herald of Ice, which is my kind of thing.
There was a ghost! There's ectoplasm!
I can put some points in cold damage nodes, as well as elemental damage, and maybe go full conversion from physical to cold, like Eye Shot, for example, or Frost Blades. Unfortunately, that would mean that all other skills that don't share the cold tag are not benefiting from that investment. Same happens if I go with static slam, for example. Any nodes related to slams or lighting or elemental do not scale well with the rest. At first glance, most of you would say just go with attack, AoE, melee, as most of them shares those tags. Well, things here are getting more tricky, more Path of Exile. Imagine that I have 10 points to spend on nodes and I spend them all on increased damage, increased AoE, melee damage. Numbers of those skills could increase to 300, for example, and seems like a good solution at first. But what if I told you that Dancing Spear scales best with physical damage? Maybe 10 nodes in the right passives can make Dancing Spear reach 500 damage instead of 300. Would you prefer then to have 4 skills that deal 300 damage? Or just one that deals 500? If the skill in question don't have any cooldown, I think most people will prefer the second option. Of course, this is all hypothetical and very superficial. We don't know anything about tags, scaling, not even the names of those skills. The idea behind this video is not to say something as a fact, but rather to raise a question. The reality is that in-game, things are not easier than this. In fact, it's the other way around. Scaling in this game is not easy to determine or follow, not even in a guide. Opportunity costs in Path of Exile once you enter the endgame are extremely high and people take a lot of time to min-max. But eventually, they always do. So to not leave you with an open question, I will give you my honest opinion. Okay? This is my opinion. The only one that cares about my opinion is myself. And that's great. So, I think we're going to play with 2 or 3 skills, one for clear, one for single target, with the advantage of not needing to swap gems and wasting sockets. That will be absolutely great. Another possibility could be finding skills that shares a lot of tags or a lot of scaling in common. This is not new for Path of Exile, there's a lot of skills that works really well together. Maybe it's not like the Agorite Taser, but a different combination. There is also the possibility that GGG surprise us this weekend actually in the ExileCon with something new that addresses this topic. Who knows? But my final option, and maybe the most tasty of all, I think conversion is coming back. I think it's coming back. That will be all. Un abrazo.